Hello friends, I'm Steph Koza, and it's time to talk about Aquaman. Aquaman is the newest installment in the DC Cinematic Universe. It's directed by James Wan, and it stars Jason Momoa as Aquaman. We've seen him as Aquaman before in Justice League, which was a movie. And he's a pretty good Aquaman, you know, he makes Aquaman look cool, which is kind of difficult to do. You know, he's badass. He's a badass looking dude. He just has badass all over his face. And I was also hopeful that this movie would be a good DC movie because it's been a while since we've had a good DC movie. So every time there's a new one, I'm just like crossing my fingers that it's gonna be a good one. And this one was like, it was okay. It was alright. We get a little bit of Aquaman's origin story in this movie. We see his parents, his mother, who is the Queen of Atlantis, and his father, who is just a man who lives in a lighthouse. And the movie is basically the story of how Aquaman learns that he is the heir to Atlantis. He is destined to be the king of the ocean, and as he's trying to do that, he is also battling some villains. Got some bad guys, obviously. It's a superhero movie, so we've got Aquaman's brother, or half-brother. It's his mother's son, who is 100% aqua dude merman? Atlantean. He is an Atlantean. And then we also have Black Manta in this movie, who is a huge Aquaman villain, like the best Aquaman villain. Everyone is fighting him, and he is just like struggling and also just learning about himself and about Atlantis and where he comes from. So it's like a mixture of an origin story. Personally, I would have liked a little bit more origin story from him. I would have liked some more character development. He also meets Mera, who is another Atlantean. She is a princess, and she is betrothed to Aquaman's brother, sort of an arranged marriage thing. She's not super into it. And the two of them go on this epic journey with a lot of epic battles, and that was really fun to watch. I thoroughly enjoyed Mera. I loved her character. So badass. Just like I could watch her kick ass all day long. Just sign me up for 3 hours of that. I will watch that movie. She was probably my favorite character in the entire movie. I really enjoyed her. I also really loved Willem Dafoe's character, who is sort of like Aquaman's mentor. He sort of trained him when he was a kid. I think he was a pretty cool character, and I love Willem Dafoe. Like, he could play anyone and do a great job. I think Jason Momoa, like, physically looks awesome as Aquaman. Like, I'm sold. His acting was pretty good. Like, I don't really feel like he was given a lot of material to, like, show off his acting abilities, so like he was fine for what he was given. I just don't think he was given anything very good. I think the first half of this movie has a really rough start. I was not sold for a while. I think the dialogue was very rusty. There were a lot of jokes that just did not land for me. Like 90% of the jokes in this movie just not even remotely funny. It was mostly only in the first half of the movie that it was like this. I think after that, they kind of figured it out, I will say. The action scenes in this movie are incredible. Probably the best part of the movie is the action and the visuals. Every action-packed part of this film was very enjoyable, and the visuals were amazing. Very beautiful. Not only were the action scenes really cool to look at, but also just the world of Atlantis and being underwater. The world of Atlantis is beautiful and breathtaking, but unfortunately that's where this movie's strengths lie, and everything else kind of falls a little bit flat. The visuals kind of reminded me of Pandora from Avatar, where it's like nighttime and everything is glowing like blues and purples, and it's that really cool contrast of like neon lights and dark abyss of the ocean. And that was really beautiful. I loved that. I think all the visual effects down there in the water were really cool. I liked the way everyone kind of like floated around, and they all had capes that were like billowing behind them, and their hair was all like whoa. It was just an interesting thing to watch because not a lot of movies take place underwater, so that was kind of cool. But like I said, that's really the best part of the movie. I think the plot was very uninspired. It was very unbalanced to me. And I think one of the biggest problems for me was that King Orm, who is Aquaman's half-brother, and Black Manta are both villains in this movie. And while they're both really crucial to Aquaman's story and really important and really interesting, I feel like there was just too much. Like, I didn't want two villains. It was kind of confusing. It was like there were two different stories, two different battles. They were sort of working together, but like they had different motives, and it was just very overpowering. I think King Orm is definitely the main villain of this movie. He takes up a lot more screen time, and his story is primarily the story that we're focused on. And Black Manta is sort of like a pawn that he uses who also has his own motives, and it's just like a whole thing. And I feel like this was just kind of a setup so we could be introduced to Black Manta so that in the next movie he will be like the villain. Like, I'm pretty sure that's where they're going with this because he is the big Aquaman villain. It makes sense that they would do that, but I personally feel like he could have just not been in this movie at all and it would have been much better. I just feel like he wasn't necessary. Every scene that he was in was just not really super related to the main plot and also not very inspiring. Like, I didn't really care about Black Manta in this movie. He's just kind of got Inigo Montoya syndrome, like, you killed my father, prepare to die. But like less charming than Inigo Montoya. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited to see Black Manta in the next movie, I guess. But I just don't think he was necessary here. We could have done without it. Could have just cut that right out. That being said, I think there are a lot of things that could have been cut out of this movie. I think a lot of scenes ran too long, a lot of the dialogue and the conversations were just dragging, and I just don't think that was necessary. I think this movie really, really needed to be edited a lot more than it was. It needed to be tightened up. It felt very long. It is very long. It's like 2.5 hours, and I just felt myself getting kind of bored throughout the movie, and maybe some of that is contributed to the editing, and some of it could also be contributed to the fact that it was just a very predictable plot. Like, there was no real sense of danger, and I know that's how superhero movies go. Like, they are pretty predictable. Like, you know the hero's gonna win in the end. Like, it's pretty much a cookie cutter formula at this point. But I just felt like there was nothing that ever happened that was risky. And I think what really contributed to that is the fact that I just didn't really care that much about any of the characters. Yeah, I didn't want Aquaman to die, but like, I wasn't super invested in him emotionally. I didn't really get a lot from him. There wasn't much of an origin story of like anything truly endearing about him as a person. It was just like, he could be really badass, he can make these really gnarly faces and like beat people up, and that's cool, but like, the only real sense of humanity I got from him was when he was with his father in the beginning, or talking about his mother. He just like wanted to protect his dad and live a normal life, and like didn't really want to be all superhero famous dude. And he also doesn't really want to be the king of Atlantis. He's just like a very humble, low-key sort of guy, which was nice, but I would have liked to see a little bit more of that character because I think we only got a little bit of that in the beginning, and then the rest of the movie is just him kicking ass, which is fun and all well and good, but I need a little bit more. I think Mera was probably the most moving character out of all of them. Like, she really cared about Atlantis and what she was doing, and I understood that, and it was translating through the screen to me very well, and I think she did a great job of that. Like, I could feel her compassion, and I really did feel for her, and I really truly did like her character a lot. I thought she was great, but I think I could have used a little bit more from her as well. There just wasn't enough of either of them. I think I got more out of King Orm than anyone else. It was like they were trying to give the villains these like intense backstories so you like really understood them and they were like relatable and understandable, which is good and wonderful. You should totally do that to your villains all the time, but I would also like that for my heroes. It's just a little bit off balance. I wanted more from Aquaman. I wanted more from Mera. I wanted more from their relationship with each other because there's this kind of romance sort of happening between the two of them, and I don't know, I just wasn't really feeling it. I felt like they didn't have that much chemistry. It was kind of like a very awkward, forced, like, oh, oops, we're accidentally holding hands, I guess I'm in love with you now. I don't know, everything just needed more development. Things needed to be taken out to make room for those things to have a little bit more time. But all in all, it wasn't a terrible movie. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. I think if I had to compare it to some other superhero movie, I would probably say it's somewhere between Thor 1 and Thor 2 on the scale of like how good it was or how entertaining it was. It was better than Thor 2. I will say it was better than Thor 2. Thank God. But I just kind of feel like this is one of those movies that I'm gonna forget the plot of. Like, if you asked me what Thor 2 was about, there were some elves, some evil elves, a lot of red happening. I don't know. So as far as rating this movie goes, I am going to give Aquaman a 3 out of 5. But that's my review of Aquaman. I will also be posting a spoiler review of Aquaman, which I haven't done in a while. I'm trying out a new format this year. I'll be posting the review tomorrow, but it's a little bit less of a review and more of a vlog. I basically went to the movies and I vlogged immediately afterwards to get my initial reaction. I thought it would be an interesting way to do my spoiler reviews from now on, so look out for that. It will be coming out tomorrow. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please let me know in the comments below what you thought about Aquaman. Also, if you would like to be part of the conversation about Aquaman, you can join our Aquaman chat room. I will have a link to my Patreon in the description below, where if you become a patron, you're invited to my chat room forever, and I have a chat room for every single movie that I ever review, so we can talk about it in detail, and it's a lot of fun. But that's all for today. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!